All right. And Brian Toms is another one of our doctoral students who's just finishing. He looked at the idea of how do we get people to try and know other people who might have similar interests. So he developed an algorithm that uses ratings, so students can rate other people's input into the system, blog entries or e-portfolio entries. And the ratings, he takes the ratings and he compares them across students and says, oh, when you log on, it says something like, oh, by the way, did you know that so-and-so rated these items similar to you or has given similar ratings? You might want to contact them, make them a friend. And another way he did it was, oh, by the way, there are other entries in the system that have similar kinds of tags or similar kinds of essence to the ones that you've been rating. You might want to look at those people, more of those people's entries. So that kind of thing. And his dissertation isn't done yet, so I don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be on that. Then we've got a student studying self-directed learning and trying to understand how to develop an interface, wiki interface that will facilitate students having to manage their own learning process. And she's just working on that. We've got some students who are playing around with two concepts. One is group writing, collaborating on documents, and developing tools or plugins that will facilitate group collaboration, group writing collaboration. I think it's a pretty neat piece of work that's sort of becoming a dissertation. And then two students are working on something called anchored discussion. And go back to that multimedia player I was talking about, the planning system. And the idea there is that research shows that if you point to something specifically in a document or in some context, the discussion is much more effective than if you just ask people to talk about the general thing. So ask somebody to talk about a video, you won't get as effective a discussion as if you get people to talk about a segment of the video. There's good research that shows that that's a better discussion. But there are some interfaces, but there aren't good interfaces to facilitate that process. So they're working on that idea. And out of all this work that we've done, we've had 3, I'd say minor journal publications, not major ones. But it's hard to break into the domain of publishing design science research in our field. Just one of those things. We're trying to figure out a way to do that. But at least we've got some editors and reviewers interested. And we've done much better in submitting papers to conferences and getting them accepted, mainly for publication, a couple of times posters. But we've really got a lot of interesting things going on, getting sent out for review and so on. So with that, you have my email address and our website, which probably needs some updating, but it will be over the next little while. So thanks for listening to me to drone on for almost an hour. I'm sorry I took so long. And any other questions?
They booked the room till 5, so
yeah, all right. Let's keep going. Let me show you my next presentation. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lorne. I'm an IS undergraduate student. I'm very excited to have you here today, Professor. And I love the whole idea of having an in-conversation for your project. I've been looking into the similar social learning platforms recently, and I have a feeling or a little theory that I would like to share with you. You underline the word constructivist theory, and I would like to sort of see why we're not keeping a balance between a constructivist theory and an instructivist theory.
Right.
When we come to the development of learning to or web to technology learning platforms.
Right.
I feel that somehow unnecessarily a good instructional design is being neglected when we have the technology and it's fun to put in all these social aspects.
Right.
We come up with models like Moodle. We have good content repositories and good social networking sites, but there is very little, my understanding is that measures being made in terms of controlling the learning process.
Right.
And it might even be at a peer-to-peer level, so we can keep it constructivist, but again, what should be presented and how. And I would like to finish that. I saw that in the work that is being done, for instance, you talked about learning from the better students. That sort of directs who I should learn things from. Or the word cloud, again, sort of designs, the designs.
Exactly.
Or talking about a segment of a video. So I love all of those things, but there is no clarification that we would like to sort of put more weight on this bit of research. I would love to hear your insight.
Well, I think one of the things roadblocks we've run into, I think, and we readily admitted is it's really hard to measure learning directly, let alone indirectly. It's just a hard thing to measure for various reasons, because the evaluation of the learning always gets conflated, or is that the right word? Conflated with the process of learning, right? So you always have to, and especially in an educational setting, you're almost always required to do some evaluation of learning. And yet, that's going to change the way people actually go through the process. So it's really hard to get at that directly. Plus, grades and things that the way we measure how people learn is by a grade. And grades don't always define what you really know. So that's why we're going around all these sort of second level measures, like, is the community getting stronger? Is there more social capital? Are people interacting with other people that they wouldn't have normally interacted with? Instead of trying to understand how the learning has changed directly, because that's a really hard thing to do. And we figure we'll leave that to the educational researchers, because I think we're just not as good at doing that as they would be. So that's the only thing I can tell you. You're probably right. There is a flaw, or there's a there's a missing.
Because just sorry, if you bear with me for a few seconds, like learning in a hallway from a conversation,
right,
or learning in a library, are not things that most of the people do, because they just are not so advanced learners.
Right.
Right? So if you can do that, you're already at a stage in your life that you've had a lot of learning behind you.
It's a good point. Really good point. Yeah. And of course, if you don't do all these things experimentally, you can never tease out who those people are. You can only take so many covariance measures and all those kinds of things. They're really difficult things. You have to have big sample sizes. You have to constrain certain things. So yeah, there are a lot of issues with doing this kind of research.